The gunshot cracked across the desert, a single sharp sound that sliced through the night. Mason Carter hit the dirt, the rough grit of the New Mexico landscape scraping against his cheek. He didn't breathe. He didn't move. He just listened. The patrol was close. He could almost smell the sweat on their horses, the cheap tobacco on their breath. These were men who'd called him brother just last month. Now they were hunting him like an animal. Blood, warm and sticky, was seeping through his fingers. He had his hand clamped over his left shoulder, a desperate attempt to keep his life from draining out into the sand. The bullet had ripped clean through the muscle. A small mercy, he thought, in a world that had forgotten the meaning of the word. He was a deserter. That was a firing squad offense. But he was also the man who shot his commanding officer. And for that, they saved something worse. He had to move. Every shift of his weight was a fresh agony, a white-hot fire screaming through his shoulder. His horse was gone, spooked by the ambush, taking his supplies with it. All he had left was the Winchester in his hand, the Colt revolver at his hip, and a canteen that was dangerously light. That and a small leather pouch. The one thing he'd never let go of. He knew there was a stream a few miles northwest. Water. A chance to clean his wound. A chance to throw them off his trail. He found the North Star, a cold, distant diamond in the black velvet sky, and he started to walk. His mind, a traitor in its own right, kept dragging him back. Back to the day his world turned to ash. Eagle Canyon. The name itself was a sickness in his gut. Captain Hargrove had called it a peace negotiation. But it was a lie. Mason could still see the faces of the Apache delegates, their expressions of confusion turning to betrayal as the order was given. The order to open fire on unarmed men. Mason had refused. He'd refused to slaughter men who came in peace. And when Hargrove called him a coward and ordered his arrest, Mason had put a bullet in the captain's leg and ran. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of hell. 3 weeks of nursing a wound in his soul that was far deeper than the hole in his shoulder. He crested a small rise, and that's when the smell hit him. It wasn't the smell of sagebrush or dry earth. It was coppery, metallic, the unmistakable smell of blood. A lot of it. Then came the sound. A low, guttural rumble that vibrated right through the soles of his boots. He dropped to a crouch, his eyes scanning the moonlit valley below. And what he saw made the blood in his own veins run cold. Wolves. 6 of them. Lean, hungry shadows circling something on the ground. A fresh kill. He was about to give them a wide berth, to slip away unnoticed, when he felt a fresh wave of warmth spill down his arm. His wound had reopened. The scent of his own blood, fresh and inviting, was now drifting on the night air. Too late. One of the wolves, a huge silver beast with a scarred muzzle, lifted its head. Its nostrils flared. It had found him. Mason started to back away, slow and steady, but his boots sent a cascade of small stones clattering down the slope. 6 pairs of hungry yellow eyes snapped in his direction. The silver wolf left the kill. It started toward him, a low growl rumbling in its chest. The others followed. They were abandoning their meal for something better, fresher. Mason scrambled backward, his eyes darting across the landscape, searching for any advantage, any hope. 20 yards away stood a massive boulder, its top blessedly out of their reach. He broke into a dead run, the fire in his shoulder exploding into a supernova of pain. The wolves were silent now, their paws making no sound on the sand as they closed the distance with terrifying speed. He reached the boulder, his fingers clawing for purchase on the rough stone. He hauled himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. Just as he swung his leg onto the flat top, a set of powerful jaws snapped shut on the empty air, where his boot had been a fraction of a second before. He was safe, for now. He lay on his back, the cold stone a small comfort, and stared up at the indifferent stars. The wolves circled below, their patience as vast and unforgiving as the desert itself. They knew he couldn't stay there forever. His shoulder throbbed in time with his racing heart. The fever was coming on strong, a dry heat spreading through him, despite the chill of the night. He looked at the wound. The skin around the bullet hole was an angry red, swollen and tight. Dark lines like tiny red veins were beginning to spread outward. blood poisoning. If the wolves didn't get him, the infection would. He was a dead man. His hand, almost of its own accord, went to the leather pouch at his side. He pulled out a small object wrapped in soft buckskin. Carefully, he unwrapped it. It was an Apache arrow point, carved from shimmering black obsidian. But it wasn't a normal arrow point. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, symbols that seemed to glow with a faint inner light under the moon. An old medicine man had given it to him 5 years ago. Mason had saved him from a flash flood, and the old man had pressed the point into his palm. "This arrow seeks its rightful owner," the medicine man had said. "When it finds him, a blood debt will be paid, and your soul will be healed." Mason had never understood the words. He'd kept it as a good luck charm, a curiosity. Now, with death circling below, he wondered if the arrow's purpose would die with him. The wolves were getting restless. The big silver one leaped, its claws scraping against the rock, trying to get to him. Mason kicked out, and the wolf fell back with an angry snarl. And then another sound cut through the night. Gunfire, distant but clear. One shot, then two more. The wolves all froze, their heads swiveling toward the sound. More shots rang out, followed by something that turned Mason's blood to ice. Screams, high-pitched and terrified. Children. The pack was torn. Him, the wounded man trapped on the rock, or the promise of easier prey just over the rise. Another volley of shots, another scream, and the wolves made their decision. They abandoned him. As one, they turned and loped away, their silver fur melting into the moonlit desert. Mason watched them go, a strange mix of relief and dread churning in his stomach. He was safe from the wolves, but someone else wasn't. He could stay here, tend his wound, and wait for dawn. It was the smart thing to do, the sane thing to do. The screams came again, weaker this time, choked with terror. Children. Damn it all, Mason cursed, and slid down from the rock. Pain shot through him, a blinding flash of light behind his eyes, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself to his feet. He had 6 rounds in the Colt, 4 in the Winchester. It wasn't much. It would have to be enough. He followed the wolf tracks, moving as fast as his broken body would allow. The sounds of the attack grew louder, snarls, screams, and the irregular crack of a single rifle. He crested a small rise, and the scene below him made his heart stop. It was a small Apache camp, or what was left of it. Supplies were scattered everywhere. 2 bodies, an old man and an old woman, lay motionless by a dying fire. And the wolves. The wolves were circling an overturned wagon. 2 small children were huddled behind it. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, was standing in front of the wagon, holding a rifle that was nearly as tall as she was. It trembled in her small hands. Behind her, a younger girl, no more than 7, was pressed against the wagon, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it seemed to have stolen her voice. The older girl fired. The recoil sent her stumbling backward. The shot went wide, serving only to enrage the pack. 3 of them were closing in, their yellow eyes fixed on the children. Mason didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He raised his Winchester, sighted on the closest wolf, and squeezed the trigger. The shot broke the night silence. The wolf dropped in mid-leap, dead before it hit the sand. The rest of the pack whirled around, surprised by this new threat. Mason worked the lever action, chambering another round. He fired again. A second wolf yelped, a fresh wound blossoming on its shoulder. He started running, closing the distance to the wagon, firing his 3rd shot at the big silver wolf, the leader. The bullet caught it in the flank. It spun around with a howl of rage. "Get down!" he yelled at the girl with the rifle. She stared at him, her dark eyes a mixture of fear and hope, before diving behind the wagon. The wounded wolves were circling now, wary. Mason stood his ground, the Winchester hot in his hands, the fire in his own shoulder a distant roaring furnace. The pack attacked. They came from all sides, a storm of teeth and claws. Mason fired his last rifle round, dropping one. He threw the empty Winchester aside and drew his Colt. The revolver barked twice. 2 more wolves fell. A 3rd one lunged from his blind side. He pivoted, but not fast enough. Teeth sank into his forearm. Pain, sharp and blinding, exploded up his arm. He slammed the butt of his revolver into the wolf's skull. Once, twice, it released him with a yelp. 2 shots left. 2 wolves. The big silver leader, blood matting the fur on its flank, stalked toward him. Its eyes were filled with a cold, ancient hatred. The last unwounded wolf moved with it, flanking him, looking for an opening. Mason backed toward the wagon, putting himself between the predators and the children. His vision was starting to blur. The blood loss, the fever, it was all catching up to him. The silver wolf charged. Mason waited. He let it come. At the very last second, he fired. The bullet went straight into its open, snarling mouth. The beast collapsed in a heap at his feet. The final wolf stared for a second, then turned and vanished into the darkness. Mason's strength left him all at once. The Colt slipped from his numb fingers. He sagged against the wagon, his legs giving out. Through the graying haze of his vision, he saw the older girl step out from behind the wagon. As he slid to the ground, something caught his eye, a patterned cloth around her neck. Even in the dim light, he could see the design. It was identical to the symbols etched into the obsidian arrow point in his pouch. "The arrow finds its owner," he whispered, the old medicine man's words a final fading echo as the world went black. He drifted in a sea of fever dreams, small hands pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, the bitter taste of herbs, soft voices speaking a language he didn't understand, a sharp, probing pain in his shoulder, followed by a blessed, spreading numbness. When he finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the canvas roof of a small shelter. Morning light was filtering through the seams. He tried to sit up, but a bolt of pain stopped him cold. "Don't move," a young voice said. "Wound will open." It was the older girl. She was watching him with solemn, dark eyes. Up close, he could see she was maybe 11 or 12, with a toughness about her that no child should have. The patterned cloth was still around her neck. "You helped us," she said. It wasn't a question. "Why?" Mason's lips were cracked and dry. "Seemed like the right thing to do." She studied him for a long moment, then held a water skin to his lips. The water was cool and clean. "I'm Mason Carter," he said, when he could speak again. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "I am Winona," she said finally. "My sister is Kaya." She motioned to the small figure huddled at the back of the shelter. The younger girl was watching him, her eyes still wide with a silent, lingering terror. Mason noticed his shoulder was clean, bandaged with fresh strips of cloth. The angry red lines of the infection looked better, fainter. "You fixed my wound," he said. Winona shrugged. "I know some medicine, enough to stop the blood poison." She tilted her head, her curiosity warring with her caution. "You are a blue-coat soldier." Mason tensed. "I was. Not anymore." "Why you help Apache children?" She pressed. "Most white men shoot us." The truth of her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. He had seen it with his own eyes. "Not all white men are the same," he said quietly, "just like not all Apache are the same." Winona seemed to consider this. Her gaze fell on his wounded forearm, the deep puncture marks left by the wolf. "The wolves are dead. 5 of them." Her young face hardened. "Good. They killed my grandparents." She glanced at her silent sister. "Kaya, she hasn't spoken since the attack. She saw what they did." Mason had seen men break in battle, their minds retreating from horrors they couldn't process. Some came back. Some were lost forever. "I'm sorry," he said. The words felt small, useless. Winona straightened her small shoulders. "We must go. We must reach our mother." She caught herself, her eyes darting away. "Before what?" Mason asked. She busied herself checking his bandages. "We were traveling to find a special medicine plant. For our mother. She is very sick." "Where is she?" "In a hidden place. 3 days' journey." She pointed southwest toward a distant line of mountains that shimmered in the heat. "A sacred canyon, where our people hide from the blue coats." She was heading straight into the heart of Apache territory, a place no white man, especially a former cavalry scout, could go and expect to come out alive. "I can help you get there," Mason heard himself say. Winona's eyes narrowed. Why? It was a fair question. He couldn't leave them. That was part of it, but there was something else. The arrow point in his pouch, the identical symbol around her neck. It felt like fate. "You saved my life," he said instead. "I owe you. Besides, 2 children won't last long out here alone." She didn't look convinced. "We are Apache. We know the desert." "I don't doubt it," he said. "But your rifle is empty. And your sister. She needs someone to watch over her while she heals on the inside." He tapped his temple. Winona looked from Mason to her silent sister, then back again. "We leave at midday," she said, her voice firm. "If you slow us down, we leave you." "Fair enough," Mason nodded. As Winona left to gather what little they had left, Mason pushed himself up. His body protested, but the fever was gone. Her medicine was working. His gaze fell on Kaya. She was still watching him, her eyes like 2 dark, haunted pools. He smiled gently. "Hello, Kaya. My name's Mason. I'm going to be traveling with you for a bit." She didn't move, didn't make a sound. But as he settled back, he saw her small hand move in the dirt beside her. She was drawing. He couldn't see what it was, but it was something. A tiny spark in the darkness. Outside, he could hear Winona moving around the ruined camp. He thought about the journey ahead. 3 days into hostile territory, every patrol, every settler, every Apache warrior would see the uniform he still wore and shoot on sight. But something told him this was a journey he was meant to take. The arrow point felt warm against his side, a strange, persistent heat, the symbol on Winona's neck. It was more than a coincidence. It was a sign. He reached into his pouch and unwrapped the arrow. The obsidian gleamed, the symbols seeming to shift and writhe in the dim light. He wrapped it back up just as Winona came back into the shelter. "We must bury our grandparents," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying a grief too deep for her years. Mason got to his feet, ignoring the protest from his shoulder. "I'll help." Together, they stepped out into the blinding desert sun. They worked under the merciless heat, gathering stones to cover the bodies. The Apache way, Winona explained, was not to trap the spirits underground. They needed to be free to travel. Each stone Mason lifted sent a fresh wave of pain through his shoulder, but he worked without complaint. When they were finished, Winona spoke words in her own language over the 2 small mounds of rock, her voice clear and strong in the desert silence. Kaya, who had watched from a distance, walked forward like a tiny sleepwalker. She knelt and placed a small, twisted doll made of cloth and twigs on each grave, a final gift for her grandparents' journey to the spirit world. The simple, heartbreaking act of a child's faith made Mason's throat tighten. They salvaged what they could: a water skin, some dried meat, a cooking pot. Not much for 3 people to survive on for 3 days, but it would have to do. "Which way?" Mason asked. Winona pointed southwest. "We follow the sunset path." "Stay behind me," Mason told her. "Keep Kaya close. If I tell you to hide, you do it. No questions." She nodded, her expression serious. She took her sister's hand, and they set off, leaving the ghosts of their family and the dead wolves behind them. The sun was a brutal hammer in the sky. Mason kept a steady pace, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for any sign of dust, any flicker of movement that could mean a cavalry patrol. By late afternoon, the girls were exhausted. "We'll rest there," Mason said, pointing to a cluster of boulders that offered a patch of shade. They huddled together, rationing sips of water. His shoulder was a dull, persistent throb, but the infection hadn't gotten worse. A small victory. As the heat of the day began to fade, he saw Kaya watching him with these same haunted eyes. He pointed to the first star that had appeared in the evening sky. "That's Venus," he said softly. "The Apache call it the Copper Star Woman, don't they?" Winona, who had been dozing, looked at him in surprise. "You know Apache star names?" "A scout I knew taught me a few things," Mason said. "Some of your language, too." "Not all soldiers hate the Apache," he said carefully. "Some of us try to understand." "But you still fought us," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple, brutal fact. Shame, hotter than any fever, burned in his chest. "Yes," he admitted. "I fought, until I couldn't anymore." "What made you stop?" she asked. He thought about Eagle Canyon, the screams, the betrayal. I was ordered to do something wrong, he said. Something I couldn't live with. So I left. You ran away. Yes. Winona seemed to accept this. As they got ready to move on, Mason noticed that Kaya had drawn something in the dust. A single, large star, surrounded by smaller stars. Like a family. It was the first time he'd seen her create something that wasn't just a random pattern. A flicker of hope ignited inside him. They traveled through the cool of the night, the desert a landscape of silver and shadow under the moon. Around midnight, they stopped to rest. Your medicine is working, he told Winona, nodding at his shoulder. The fever's gone. She just shrugged. My mother is a much better healer. She knows all the plants. The sickness your mother has, Mason asked. What is it? Winona's face darkened. It's not a fever. It started after the soldiers came to our old village. Many died. It's like a poison in the blood. A poison. The word sent a chill down his spine. As they talked, Kaya moved closer, her eyes darting between them. She was listening. She understood. He took the first watch, the girls asleep under a shared blanket. The desert night was vast and silent, the stars like a spill of diamonds across black velvet. But peace was a luxury he couldn't afford. Behind his closed eyes, he saw the massacre at Eagle Canyon on a repeating loop. He had shot his commanding officer, but it was too late to save most of the Apache men. He never knew if their families had escaped. Now here he was, protecting two Apache children, heading into the very heart of their territory. The irony was a bitter taste in his mouth. His hand went to the leather pouch. When it finds its rightful owner, the medicine man had said, a blood debt will be paid. Was Winona the owner? Or was it someone else, waiting for them at the end of this journey? He heard a soft whimper. Kaya, trapped in a nightmare. Winona was instantly awake, pulling her sister close, murmuring to her in Apache until the small, trembling body grew still. The fierce, protective love of a child, forced to be a parent, struck Mason harder than any bullet. He would see them to safety. He owed them that much. He owed himself that much. The second day, the terrain grew steeper, the risk of being seen much higher. This was contested land, hunted by both the cavalry and Apache war parties. By mid-morning, they were in a narrow canyon, the high walls offering some relief from the sun. But Mason's instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. He signaled for the girls to hide and crept forward alone. The smell hit him first, the stench of death, baking in the heat. He rounded a bend and saw them, a cavalry patrol, or what was left of one. 8 men, their blue uniforms a stark, ugly splash of color against the red rock. They'd been ambushed. Arrows protruded from their chests, each one a testament to the deadly precision of the attack. Winona was suddenly beside him, her face a mask of disturbing calm. You shouldn't be here, he said, but she ignored him. Wakiza's warriors, she said, pointing to the markings on an arrow. They protect this land. Wakiza. The name was a legend in the territory, a brilliant, ruthless war chief who had eluded the army for years. A chill went down Mason's spine. You know of him? All Apache know Wakiza, she said, a flicker of something, pride maybe in her eyes. Then he saw it, a glint of metal on one of the uniforms, a lieutenant's insignia. He turned the body over and his stomach clenched. Lieutenant Davis, a good man, a fair officer. Now just another body in a forgotten canyon. Something was clutched in Davis's hand, a piece of paper stained with blood. Mason pried it from the dead man's fingers. It was an order, signed by Captain Hargrove. An order for the capture of Mason Carter, deserter, to be returned for immediate execution. The date was 5 days ago. Hargrove hadn't given up, and if this patrol was on his trail, there would be others. We need to move, he said, his voice tight. Now! Winona's eyes were sharp. The paper. It was about you. There was no point in lying. Yes, they were looking for me. Why do they hunt you so hard? She asked. Apache only hunt their own for a great betrayal, like killing a chief. Her logic was sharp, unsettling. He looked into her young, knowing eyes. Yes, he admitted, I shot my commanding officer. He saw a flicker of something in her expression. Respect? You shot him dead? No. In the leg. Enough to stop him. She nodded slowly as if the distinction was important. We go now. A different way. They took a new route, a longer, harder path that would add miles to their journey. But it was the only choice. They were being hunted from both sides now. Soldiers who wanted him dead for desertion, and Apache warriors who would kill him just for being a white man. Late that afternoon, they found a small spring. While Winona filled the water skin, Mason saw Kaya kneeling in the damp sand, drawing an intricate pattern of lines and circles. It's a story, Winona explained when she returned, about how the first people found water in the desert. Grandfather told her many stories. She remembers them all. Stories are important, Mason said. They help us remember who we are. What stories do you remember? Winona asked. The question caught him off guard. All his stories were of war, of death, of a life he was trying to forget. I remember true stories, he said finally. Some good, some not. Some stories are too heavy to carry, she said with a wisdom far beyond her years. But we must not forget them, or they happen again. As darkness fell, they built a small fire. Winona was watching him clean his weapons. You are good with a gun, she observed. You teach me? My rifle is useless now. He thought about it. Teaching an Apache girl to be a better shot. The irony was thick enough to choke on. But in this land, it could mean the difference between life and death for her. I'll teach you, he said. As they ate the last of their dried meat, he found himself staring at the cloth around her neck. The pattern. It was so familiar. Your neck cloth, he said. The symbol is unusual. It is a medicine symbol, she explained. Very old, very powerful. My mother made it for me. It has been in our family for many generations. Why do you ask? She said, her eyes bright with curiosity. He hesitated, then reached into his pouch. He unwrapped the obsidian arrow point and held it out in his palm. The firelight danced on its polished surface. Winona's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the arrow, then at him, her face a mask of disbelief. Where did you get this? She demanded, her voice suddenly tense. An old medicine man gave it to me. 5 years ago, I saved him from a flash flood. He showed her the symbols, identical to the ones on her neckcloth. He said it would find its rightful owner. Her hand hovered over the arrow, not quite daring to touch it. This is a sacred thing, she whispered. The medicine man, did he have white hair here? She touched her temple. Mason nodded, stunned. Yes, and a scar across his cheek. Winona sat back, her face pale. That was Nahima, the greatest healer of our people. She swallowed hard. He was my grandfather. The words hit Mason like a physical blow. Her grandfather. That meant he died 2 winters ago, Winona continued, her voice barely a whisper. But he spoke of a white soldier who saved him. He said the man had a good heart under his blue coat. It was too perfect, too impossible to be a coincidence. Did he tell you what this arrow means? Mason asked. He said some knowledge is only for the right time, for the right person. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a new understanding. And now you are here, with his arrow, helping his granddaughters. This is not an accident. No, Mason agreed softly. I don't believe it is. The next day their supplies were gone. No food, less than a day's worth of water. As they rested in the midday heat, Mason saw it. A flicker of movement on a distant ridge. A flash of sunlight on metal. A rifle barrel. Or a spyglass. Someone's watching us, he murmured to Winona. She followed his gaze, her face unreadable. Apache scout or blue coat? Can't tell, but we have to assume they've seen us. They moved into a series of narrow slot canyons, a maze of rock that would hide them from above, but also make them blind. An hour later, they emerged into a box canyon, sheer walls on 3 sides. A small spring bubbled from the rock, a miracle of green in the middle of the barren rock. It was a perfect place to rest, a perfect place for an ambush. As they drank from the spring, a sound froze them in place, a horse's nicker, echoing off the canyon walls. Riders. They were coming. Mason pushed the girls behind a boulder and took a position near the canyon entrance, his rifle ready. The sounds grew louder. First, a single horse, a cavalry mount, riderless, wandered into the canyon. Then another. This one had a rider, an officer. Even from a distance, Mason recognized the rigid posture, the arrogant set of the shoulders. Captain Hargrove, the man who had ordered the massacre, the man who had shot him, the man who had been hunting him for weeks. Mason's finger tightened on the trigger. It was a clean shot, an easy shot. But Hargrove wasn't alone. A third horse appeared, and on it, a sight that made Mason's blood run cold. A young Apache warrior, his hands bound, a rope around his neck, the other end tied to Hargrove's saddle. It was a trap, not for him, for someone else. Hargrove dismounted by the spring, unaware of their presence. "Water the horses," he ordered his prisoner. "Then yourself. It may be your last drink, unless you tell me where to find Wakaza's camp." The warrior said nothing. Hargrove yanked on the rope. "Your friends weren't so quiet," he snarled. "Lieutenant Davis got enough out of them to lead us right to the hidden canyon. All I need from you is to confirm the path." The hidden canyon. He knew where it was. That meant the girl's mother, their entire tribe, was in danger. Hargrove wasn't just hunting a deserter. He was leading an attack. Mason was about to move, to circle around, when his boot dislodged a stone. Hargrove whirled, his revolver in his hand in an instant. "Who's there? Show yourself!" Before Mason could react, Winona stepped out from behind the boulder, her hands raised. "Please don't shoot," she said. "We are just children. We are lost." Hargrove's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with a cold, calculating light. "An Apache child? Out here alone?" "Not alone," Winona said, her voice shaking but steady. "With my sister. Our grandparents are dead. We are trying to find our mother." As Kaya reluctantly stepped into view, Mason made his move. He stepped out from behind his own rock, his Winchester leveled at Hargrove's chest. "Let the children go, Captain," he said. "This is between you and me." Hargrove's shock melted into a triumphant smile. "Carter, I knew I'd find you." His revolver was still pointed at Winona. "Drop your weapon, or the girl dies first." "You're not leaving this canyon, Hargrove," Mason said. "Not after what you did." The captain's smile widened. "Still playing the hero, Carter? Did you know your little friends here are the granddaughters of Wakaza himself?" The revelation hit Mason like a punch to the gut. Not just any children. The family of the most feared war chief in the territory. The medicine man, Nahima, had been Wakiza's father-in-law. It all clicked into place with dizzying speed. "That's right," Hargrove gloated. "And they're my ticket to finally ending this war. A shame you won't live to see it." His finger tightened on the trigger, and then all hell broke loose. The bound Apache warrior lunged, slamming his shoulder into Hargrove. The captain's shot went wide. Mason fired, hitting Hargrove in the arm. The captain staggered but didn't fall. Winona pulled her sister to cover as both men fired again. Hargrove's bullet grazed Mason's wounded shoulder. Mason's shot missed completely. The Apache warrior was on the ground, the rope around his neck pulling tight as Hargrove's horse spooked. He was choking. "It's over, Carter," Hargrove yelled. "My men are half a day behind me. With a cannon, we're going to wipe that hidden canyon off the map." He was telling the truth. Mason could see it in his eyes. He glanced at the girls. Winona caught his eye and pointed frantically at the choking warrior. A diversion. As if on cue, Winona darted from cover, running toward the warrior. Hargrove swung his revolver toward her, but at that exact moment, a small stone, thrown with surprising force, struck him in the back of the head. It was Kaya. The momentary distraction was all Mason needed. He stepped out and fired. The shot hit Hargrove square in the chest. The captain fell backward, a look of final surprise frozen on his face. Silence descended on the canyon. Winona was already at the warrior's side, fumbling with the rope. Mason ran to help, his knife slicing through the thick hemp. The warrior gasped for air. "Thank you," he managed. "We have to run," he said, his voice urgent. "Now." He was not alone. 30, maybe 40 soldiers are coming. They tortured our scouts. They know the way to the hidden canyon. A full military assault. "Winona," Mason said, making a snap decision. "You and Kaya go with him. His name is Aote. Warn your people. I'll slow the soldiers down." "How?" she cried. "You're one man. I know their tactics. I can buy you time." He took Hargrove's fully loaded revolver and extra ammunition. "You are the one," Aote said, his eyes wide with a new respect. "The soldier who shot his own chief at Eagle Canyon." "Yes," Mason said. Winona came to him, her face solemn. "You have my grandfather's arrow. It will protect you." Kaya, silent until now, stepped forward and pressed a small knotted cord into his hand. "For luck," Winona translated. She says, she says you are in our circle now. You must come back." He tucked the cord into his shirt pocket. "I will," he promised. They parted ways, Aote leading the girls deeper into the canyons, Mason mounting Hargrove's horse and riding out to face an army. He rode hard into the dusk, his mind racing. He was part of their circle now. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time since he'd run, he wasn't just running from something. He was riding towards something. He found a ridge overlooking the trail the soldiers would have to take. He saw them in the distance, a full company of cavalry, and they had a mountain howitzer. Aute hadn't been lying. They were coming to level the place. As darkness fell, he began his one-man war. He fired a single shot from one position, then raced to another and fired two more. He created the illusion of a full-scale Apache ambush. The column halted. Search parties were sent out. They were spooked, confused. He snuck close to their camp, scattering their horses, rolling rocks down hillsides to sound like approaching warriors. By midnight, he had them completely bogged down, dug in for a fight against a phantom army. Every hour he bought was another hour for the Apache to prepare. But he knew it wouldn't last. At dawn, they'd realize the truth. He needed to do something permanent. He needed to take out that cannon. He crept toward their camp, moving like a ghost. The mules carrying the howitzer were in a makeshift corral, guarded by two nervous sentries. He waited for his moment, for the guards to turn their backs, and slipped inside. He found the crates containing the cannon's components and loosened the straps. Then he took a small flask of coal oil from Hargrove's saddlebag and sprinkled it over the crates. The final part was the most dangerous. He lit a makeshift torch, took aim, and fired his rifle into the air just above the corral. Then he hurled the burning torch. The result was instantaneous chaos. The mules screamed in terror, bursting through the flimsy fence and scattering in every direction. The oil-soaked crates erupted in flames. Soldiers were shouting, running, trying to contain the disaster. In the confusion, Mason slipped away into the darkness. From a safe distance, he watched the cannon burn. The mission was neutralized. They could still attack, but they wouldn't have the firepower to breach the canyon walls. He had bought the Apache more than time. He had bought them a chance. He rode through the night, pushing himself and his horse to the limit. His wounds were open and bleeding again. Exhaustion was a heavy weight on his shoulders, but he had to keep going. He had to find the hidden canyon. He had to keep his promise to the girls. Dawn found him lost. The mountains were a maze of rock and shadow. He had no idea which way to go. He was about to give up hope when he saw him, a lone rider on a distant ridge. The figure raised an arm in a signal. Mason hesitated, then raised his own in response. Minutes later, the rider approached. It was Aote. "You live," the warrior said, a rare smile touching his lips. "You made good trouble for the blue coats." "The girls?" Mason asked, his heart in his throat. "They are safe. They gave the warning. Wakazer wants to meet the man who saved his granddaughters and burned the soldier's big gun. You trust me? To take me to your hidden camp?" Aote's smile widened. "You already know too much. Better to keep you close." They rode for hours, Aote leading him through a labyrinth of canyons and hidden trails. Finally, they came to a dead end, a solid wall of rock. "The hidden canyon is beyond," Aote said. "Follow me. Step only where I step." And then he walked straight into the rock and disappeared. Mason followed, his heart pounding. The rock was an illusion, a trick of light and shadow hiding a narrow passage. He squeezed through and emerged into another world. It was a hidden valley, a green paradise nestled within the towering rock walls. A stream wound through it, fed by a waterfall that cascaded from the canyon rim. There were homes, fields, people. It was a perfect secret sanctuary. As they walked toward the center of the village, everyone stopped to stare at the white man in their midst. Aote led him to a large shelter where a group was waiting. He saw them immediately, Winona and Kaya, and standing with them, a man whose presence was so powerful it seemed to suck the air from the space around him. Wakiza, the legendary war chief. "You bleed on our sacred ground, Mason Carter," Wakiza said, his voice a low rumble. "My apologies," Mason said. "The wounds were earned in service to your family." "My granddaughters tell an interesting story," the chief said, his dark eyes boring into Mason. "A white soldier who risks his life to save Apache children. Why?" The question hung in the air. "Because it was the right thing to do," Mason said. Waxa nodded slowly. "Show me what you carry." Mason unwrapped the obsidian arrow point. An old man beside Waxa gasped. "Nahima was my wife's father," Waxa said, his voice laced with a new respect. "This arrow is sacred to our people. It belongs to the healers in our family." "Then it belongs to your daughter," Mason said. "The girl's mother." "First," Wakiza said, his expression unreadable, "we must decide what to do with you. Tonight we hold a council to determine your fate." He was a prisoner, a well-treated one, but a prisoner nonetheless. Ayote led him to a small shelter. A woman named Tuluta came to treat his wounds. They were badly infected. As she worked, applying a poultice that stung like fire, he watched Kaya drawing in the dirt. She hadn't spoken, Winona told him, but she was drawing more. A good sign, Tuluta had said. Later he slept, a deep, healing sleep. He was woken by a small sound. Kaya was standing in the entrance of the shelter, holding a gourd of water. She didn't speak, but she sat with him, drawing in the dirt floor. She drew a picture of a man standing between wolves and two small children. Then she drew another picture of three figures walking toward the mountains. She connected the two drawings with a circle. Then she looked at him, and for the first time since the wolf attack, she spoke. "Circle," she said, her voice a soft whisper. Just before sunset, Winona came for him. "The council is ready." They stood him in the center of the village. Wakasa recounted the story of his arrival. An elder named Kitchi asked him about Eagle Canyon. He told them everything. The betrayal, the massacre, his refusal to obey an immoral order. The relief on their faces when he told them he had shot Hargrove was palpable. "Why do you carry Nahima's sacred arrow?" Kitchi asked. He told them the story of the flash flood, of the old medicine man's prophecy. "This arrow," Kitchi said, his voice filled with awe, "is said to hold the power to cure any illness. But the knowledge of how to use it died with Nahima." At that moment, a woman ran into the circle, her face etched with panic. She spoke rapidly to Waksa. "My daughter's condition has worsened," the chief announced. "She is asking for the white man and the medicine arrow." Mason didn't wait. "Take me to her." He was led to a larger shelter. Inside, a woman lay on a bed of furs, her breathing shallow, her skin a sickly yellow. She was beautiful, but the illness was consuming her. It was a pony, the girl's mother. Her eyes fluttered open. "Mason Carter," she whispered, "my grandfather's vision, a man with a foot in both worlds, would bring healing when the new sickness came." "What sickness?" Mason asked. He described a similar outbreak he had seen at a fort. Yellow skin, fever, bleeding. "It was the water," he said, the pieces clicking into place. "A dead animal had poisoned the well." A pony's eyes widened. "The creek. After the soldiers came, many got sick. They had poisoned the water. It was a deliberate, monstrous act." "The surgeon at the fort," Mason said, his mind racing. "He used charcoal to absorb the poison, and a tincture of yellow root." "We have those things," Kitchi exclaimed. For the next hour, the shelter became a frantic hub of healing. They combined Mason's knowledge with their own powerful medicine. A pony held the obsidian arrow point the entire time, her lips moving in a silent prayer. By the end of the night, her fever had broken. She was sleeping peacefully. She had survived. The next morning, the council reconvened. A pony was there, weak but alive. After much discussion, Wakiza stood. "The council has decided. You will be accepted as one of the people. You will be given an Apache name. Tarek, he who protects in darkness." They painted symbols on his face. A pony pressed the arrow point into his hand. "It belongs with you now," she said. the bridge between worlds my father foresaw. It was a moment of peace, of acceptance, a moment that was shattered by the arrival of a scout, gasping for breath. "Soldiers!" he cried. "Coming from the west. They are close to the hidden entrance. A second column, a coordinated attack." The peace of the valley erupted into frantic preparations for war. "My daughters," Apache said, her voice tight with fear. "Take them to the sanctuary caves." "I'll protect them," Mason promised. He led the girls up a narrow, treacherous path that climbed the canyon wall. Below them, the battle began. Gunfire, cannon blasts, screams. The cavalry had breached the entrance. They were being led by an officer on horseback, Major Reynolds, the man who had given the order at Eagle Canyon, the architect of this entire nightmare. Reynolds had spotted them. He sent a detachment of soldiers up the path after them. They were trapped. They fled into a network of caves, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. An elderly warrior and a few others stayed behind to hold the soldiers off, a suicidal rear guard to buy them time. They climbed through a long, dark tunnel, emerging onto a high alpine meadow. They were free, but they weren't safe. The soldiers emerged from the cave behind them, Reynolds at their head. He saw them. "He's after me," Mason said. "I have to lead him away." "No!" Winona cried. "Family stays together." "This is how I protect you," he said. "I promise I'll find you." Kaya pressed the knotted cord back into his hand. "Come back," she whispered. He sprinted away, drawing the soldiers after him, a desperate, suicidal run across the open meadow. He led them a brutal chase through the forest, pushing his body to its breaking point. As dusk fell, they had him cornered against a cliff face. "It's over, Carter," Reynolds yelled. "Surrender. I have the girls. Surrender, and I'll guarantee their safety." He was lying. Mason knew it, but the sliver of doubt was a shard of ice in his gut. "Prove it," he yelled back. "Let me hear their voices." "They're not with me," Reynolds called, "but I give you my word as an officer." "Your word means nothing." Mason scrambled up the cliff face, bullets kicking up rock chips around him. He found a small cave, a defensible position, and collapsed inside, his body a symphony of pain. He had done it. He had led them away. The girls were safe. He looked up at the stars, the same stars he had shown Kaya. He touched the knotted cord in his pocket. He wasn't running from his past anymore. He was part of a circle now, a family, and he would find them, no matter what. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next.